my belief is that I'll be successful. And I haven't been successful at everything, obviously. And professionally, I've had a couple of real setbacks. But I have this core belief that I'm a smart guy. People like me. Professionally, I bring good things to the table. So I'm going to find something else. I'm going to find my way back to success. And I've never really kind of wavered from that. Even when I've lost jobs, even when these recessions sort of overwhelmed the companies I work for, I said, okay, I'm basically a winner.
We can pretty much just get started. And if you want to just answer the simple question of like who you are and what you do, that kind of thing.
I'm Mike McClernon. My work is helping seniors and families figure out the right senior living facility, we call them communities, for parents, for other loved ones who might need a place to live other than the home. People can live in assisted living. They can live in memory care communities or independent living communities. There are 90 on Long Island, and there are about 150 in Greater New York, and I help people find the right one.
That's cool. That's cool. How long have you been doing that for?
This is my 4th year.
Very, very nice. And then before that, you said you had something else that you had going on in your life, right?
Well, this is my 3rd career, actually. The 3rd piece of my career is probably more accurate. So I started off as a salesman, and I worked for Johnson & Johnson and Baxter, other medical companies, sort of coincidentally, all in medical services, but not delivered in the hospital. So home infusion. Sometimes people can't eat at all, and they get all their food, all their nutrition intravenously. And I worked for a company, Baxter, that provided that service in the home. And
wow,
it's surprising what people can do at home on their own. Chemo is delivered in the home. Antibiotics for serious infections are delivered at home. So I worked for companies that did that. I worked my way up into management. My last job in that world, which ended in '96, was working for Columbia HCA, which at the time was the biggest hospital company in the country. And I helped their home health agencies expand their business and find other ways to make money. The second piece of my career was completely different. I was in technology and technology rental. Ran a couple of companies that had offices all over the country, and we provided thousands of computers for software companies that were doing trade shows. We provided audiovisual for events like the Salesforce.com annual conference, for the New York Marathon, for other big events. So I was the CEO of that. And
that's cool.
Eventually, in most corporations, your time sort of runs out. Younger people, new ideas. So my career in the corporate world sort of ran out. I was 60 and I needed something to do. I'm very healthy. So I looked around and I bought this business, which provides advisory services to families who are looking for some sort of senior living. This is my 3rd career, and hopefully it'll last till I'm 70, 75. It's not a physically taxing job, so I think that I can do it for some time.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice that you have that prior experience, basically. It's like kind of like a nice fit for you from working basically in a very similar industry,
Well, if you work for Johnson & Johnson and Baxter, they train you well, and they're willing to promote people, especially people who are willing to move. And I was single and unattached, so I moved a number of times, had all around the country, and got management experience. I worked from home. That's typically how salespeople work. So I worked from home in California and in Michigan, in New Jersey, and in Massachusetts, and that was great training ground. But then that piece ended. I thought my career in the medical world was ended. I was a little sad because I gained a lot of knowledge, and you can't really use that when you're renting audiovisual equipment. And it turned out that in this 3rd big piece of my career, I'll be able to use that now.
I mean, that's really, really nice. And so I guess my question is, I mean, how did you even get from Johnson & Johnson to like audiovisual? I mean, I understand at that point it was still sales, so I guess that's how it fell under the same umbrella in a sense, right?
friend of mine, I just knew socially, had this computer rental company. And I said, well, why do people want to rent computers? That seems like an odd thing when they just buy them. And he said, people buy computers, but corporations are afraid of obsolescence. And this was in 97, 98. So computer technology was changing every week.
Yeah.
And a lot of corporations didn't want to have 97 technology in 98. It was changing that rapidly. Now computers are a little more stable. Even though upgrades happen, they aren't that consequential. If you're doing word processing, Excel, the computer you buy this year will still be perfectly fine in 2 years. But that wasn't the case in the late 90s. So he said, I would like you to come, and you've worked for these big companies, inject some big company sort of sensibility into our small company. And that's what I did. And he left. It was a planned retirement, and I became president of that company in 2001, just before 9/11 hit. So I was president's company. 90% of revenues were in New York, and then 9/11 hit. So I got to learn how to manage a company through a very, very severe economic downturn.
Yeah, I believe, especially in New York. Were you guys based out of New York City?
We were based just across the river in New Jersey. So, but almost all our customers were there in Manhattan.
Yeah, same thing. So yeah, obviously that's going to affect you big time. Wow, that's wild. I mean, that's really cool though.
Well, it was. I mean, it was a terrible situation, but it was quite a learning experience for me as a business person.
Yeah.
And rental companies can do a number of things to survive downturns. They can quit buying equipment, so they save money there. They can quit borrowing equipment or renting equipment, which they often do to fill in the blanks, so they save money there. They have temporary workers because the rental business is a surge business. It's up and down. So you have enough for the daily use, and then you rent people, if you will. You rent equipment to use during the surges. So you quit doing all that. You can sell equipment. So actually, we made it through the recession quite well. And in 2003, we were sold to our largest competitor. And then in 2000 and late 2008, I became president of the new company in kind of a difficult circumstance. And they said, oh, by the way, something's happening to the economy. You should figure that out. So we went through the recession of 2009 and 2010, but I learned all the lessons about how to take a rental company through a difficult time. So we got through it. It was painful, but we got through it, and we emerged probably before most of our competitors because we kind of understood what was happening. We understood the levers we could pull to get through it. And then we understood, I think, when to invest to get sort of the jump on our competition and as the economy regroup.
Well, I find it honestly just more interesting because it makes perfect sense. I don't think I've ever heard of one of these companies, renting on a large scale, but it makes perfect sense that, major companies go through technology and are going to need that and so on. So, and having to go through 9/11 in New York, the 2008 recession. Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
It was interesting. Companies rent, by the way, often for trade shows or corporate events. You don't know it as a person who's not, well, you probably do, but companies do all sorts of industrial events for non-public audiences. So companies that sell to the banking industry would do special events for bankers. And sometimes they could be large and elaborate. You can have 2,000 people attend a 3-day conference on some economic topic or some banking topic. And all those events require audiovisual technology and supporting back office technology. So there's a lot of things that happen on the non-consumer level that are good for companies that serve larger companies like this.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it interesting, and it's a nice business model, and there's probably like a million different things you could just rent out there and make money off of, and so on. It's actually funny you say that because there was somebody recently that I saw who was renting. This is not really anything similar and much on a smaller scale, but they were renting out off-road Jeeps in Maui, Hawaii. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I thought about, on Long Island here, there's, off-road places for people to drive on the beach and so on. I was like, it'd be a cool place to do it, right here on Long Island. All right. So I have, like I said, I mean, I just have like a few questions for you. Again, they're all really asking about yourself. this is kind of just like a generalized question, and I ask this to everybody that's going to be on the podcast. So the question is what does success mean to you? So it's just a straightforward question, and I want to try and get everybody's perspective on this, basically.
So I would draw a parallel track. The business, success means that I don't have to worry about tomorrow's costs, tomorrow's expenses. So I'm clear enough money that I'm not thinking about money. And success doesn't necessarily mean that I create a huge organization and am taking in shocking amounts of money. But on the other hand, it's very stressful to worry about money and worry about the business. And so I need enough money that I'm not thinking about money. And on the second level, I want to provide a generally better service for seniors and families who are looking for assisted living, considering some sort of care outside the home. Ultimately, businesses that provide better services are rewarded. And I want to do a better job than my competitors. So I have competitors that operate on the web, and I have competitors who operate like me in the community. And I've come up with a couple of innovations that I think are pretty useful. I spent a long time thinking about how to differentiate my service and make it generally friendlier and more efficient. And I've come up with a couple innovations, and I'm introducing those now.
That's a great answer. I like exactly what you said about the money thing, just because in the last podcast I did, I was interviewing this woman, Rachel, and we kind of brought that up in a sense that like you really do need a certain level of money, like at some point. But it definitely doesn't mean success in a sense. And I also like that too, that you're kind of trying to, I guess, make service the forefront of your business in a sense. I also try and think that's my main goal in my business. Like I've even said this before, like if you answer the phone and like answer emails and you just show up, like you're better than like 50% of the people that you're, in your
I think it's probably 75% actually.
Yeah. I love that. And anybody that I meet, totally, I understand that. It almost aggravates me when I meet people who have businesses and I'm like, how do you not know that? It's just like being like a reliable source and
Sure.
And also feeling like ethical in the sale that you're doing, like you want to feel good about supplying a product that isn't like, yeah, I'm screwing this person over or whatever that is,
We try to avoid that.
Yeah, exactly. Always. All right. So, I mean, at this point, my next question you basically answered already, which is tell me about your business, but it kind of has like a side question to it. And that side question is like, what makes you tick? I think you kind of answered it. So like, what makes you wake up every morning and be like, this is what I want to do? Why is it your passion?
So my parents, as all parents do, they grew old. My father had various ailments, but his mind was sharp and he died peacefully at home. My parents and my sister and her husband moved in together. They sold their respective houses and moved in together. So my parents were very well taken care of, very safe. My father died peacefully at home under hospice, but my mother had Parkinson's, and there's a particular kind of dementia that relates to Parkinson's, and she had it, and it became more pronounced once my father passed. And that's pretty typical. Once the kind of the governing force goes away in a dementia situation, the person with dementia often gets worse. And my mother did, and she was setting the house on fire, literally doing laundry in the oven, and it became unsafe to have her there. So I wasn't in this business at that time. We found a place for her, and she was never really happy. She never really was settled. She never was home again. And I'd visit her from out of town, and she said, I don't know exactly who you are. I don't know exactly where I am, but I don't like it, and I want to go home. She knew what home was, and she knew that wasn't it. Made me sad. And at the same time, there's not much we could do about it. But I sort of resolved that I could help somebody in the future. Maybe one family, a neighbor, cousins, for example, just make a slower and more discerning decision about how to help their parents when they got old. I just that idea was there, and I was doing other things professionally. But then I realized as my corporate career sort of had its natural endpoint that perhaps I could do something in this area. So I investigated it, and I found that I could, and I began this business in the latter half of 2019.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's definitely a great motivation to try and help people out. And I think I know exactly what you're talking about, like in a sense. Also, because I told you one of my clients is helping Hearts at Home that does the in-home companion care and
Sure,
so on.
good
So
company. Yep.
yeah, I understand that. I live with my grandfather and I help him out, and I do anything that I can. He's 90 years old, so it's interesting to like understand that mentality that like, especially when you lose the person that you love and that you spent your entire life with and so on. It's really tough for a lot of people. It's really tough, and that can be the most debilitating thing than a disease itself, just losing somebody that you're used to waking up next to, or having dinner with every night, whatever it is. um and like I respect anybody who's willing to like kind of put their foot in or their hand in whatever and be like, hey, look, like if you get the right help and you get someone who's willing to care for you like genuinely, you know um it really does go a long way.
I agree. And most people are safe at home, and they end up passing away at home. So assisted living and memory care, independent living, it isn't used for most people. There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on Long Island that are 75 or older, and there are 12,000 beds perhaps in this area, and they aren't all full. So, it's a special situation when people decide to go into memory care, assisted living, independent living. But for those people, it's a lifesaver.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it absolutely is. And we all are, at some point in time have to kind of face those questions and those things. And I think it's people like you that are creating businesses and have businesses that are helping the elderly population. Because it's funny. I think it's one of those things. I'm young, obviously. Like, I mean, I don't have to like really think about these things necessarily, but I also think it's one of those things that kind of just gets like thrown on people. Like they're never really thinking about it until it's like, oh, I'm old now, and now I have to like figure this out. Either your kids are doing it or whatever it is. But I find that interesting. It's like it kind of is the same for like all people. Nobody really wants to plan this out. It's not like it's not like college in a sense. Like, all right, where are you gonna where are you gonna choose to stay once you get old?
But I'm 63, and I'm very, very fit, and I eat well, I exercise, I do all the right things. And I was rolling along thinking I'd be the 85-year-old guy running a marathon. And this summer I had a TIA, which is a very minor stroke. And I'm fine. I have a little numbness in my hand. That's the only residual effect. But it was sort of an awakening, the fact that I'm not going to live forever, shockingly, and I'm not going to be healthy forever, perhaps. So I have to uh, prepare for that financially, logistically, but I also have to prepare for that emotionally and intellectually, and
yeah,
say, okay, if something happens, I have to be humble enough to understand that like everybody else, I might need some help.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's what's nice to have family and so on, and people that are around you that can help. All right. So the next thing that I have on here is this is kind of like a total out of the out of left field kind of question. Um, but the question is, have you ever won at anything in life? Just anything overall in your entire life? Is there something that you could pinpoint? You're like, yes, I won right there.
I've sort of been a winner. Athletically, I was a winner. Intellectually, I was always in the top 5% in terms of students. I've had good jobs, and even when I've lost jobs, I've been able to kind of get back to them. So um, my belief is that I'll be successful. And I haven't been successful at everything, obviously. And professionally, I've had a couple of real setbacks. But I have this core belief that I'm a smart guy. People like me. Professionally, I bring good things to the table. So I'm going to find something else. I'm going to find my way back to success. And I had I've never really kind of wavered from that. Even when I've lost jobs, even when these recessions sort of overwhelmed the companies I work for, I said, okay, you know, I'm basically a winner. And I understand that people sometimes have that attitude and get beat down, and they have to sort of change based on the world around them. And I've never been beaten down badly enough that I've varied on that point of view.
I like that point of view a lot, honestly. I envy you because I think it's definitely a hard point of view to keep in a sense. To like constantly tell yourself that you're winning all the time. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. But the people who don't struggle with that, obviously it shows in a sense. And I know from, everything you're telling me and so on, I'm sure you've been able to get to the level that you want and so on. And I'm sure you're still trying to pursue that. um, but it's nice to hear that because I think everybody kind of needs to hear that in a sense that it's more of a mental game winning at life than, we could all probably pinpoint like physical things, but it's more of just like a mental, like I'm winning every day and, I am successful. I am healthy. I am wealthy, all those things. That it not only is like manifesting it in your life, but like you believe it. You actually genuinely believe it. And you basically said like kind of like what my next question is, because it's my next question is what core values and cultural beliefs did you have, let's say at like a younger point in your life, and then now have, being a little bit older and like more experience having, 3 different careers, let's say, that you've gone through.
So I want to let people be who they are. And I think I've always had a tolerance for people who weren't like me. And I guess I was raised right, right? I mean, somebody who has a different point of view, a different lifestyle. I've never really had a hang up about that. You do you, I'll do me. And I think that that's a kind of a guiding principle, just letting people be who they are and interact with who they are and not who you want them to be. So that's an important guiding principle.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely important. I mean, you can't force somebody. It's funny. I always remember my first sales job I had. I was working in literally if you looked at the guy's website, we were on Wall Street, but we were in Belmore in his basement. And you know what I mean? Nothing crazy like that. And I'm cold calling people in Canada. And it was great, but he always used to he'd be like, Tom, you could lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it. And I just, I hated that saying because like at that point in time, it was like, yeah, all right, thanks. This isn't helping me. But, it's very true. You can't change people and you can't force them. I do like to think now though, that there's a big like influencing aspect, and maybe you could even attest to that. Like, if you could show people that you've been able to gain like a success at whatever it is, even if it's just like being healthy or, having financial success, whatever it is, like, I feel like the people around you, they kind of like migrate to that in a sense. They can understand it. They can see it.
Do you know what I find that people migrate to actually is quiet? True listening, people who truly listen and listen for a point of common ground and then interject. I think that they gain trust and confidence much more quickly. So I'm a little chatty naturally, but I'm also a little shy. And I find if I hang back and just let people talk, I'll find some common ground with them. I'll also find a way to perhaps interact with them. If it's a business thing, I'll find a way to help them. If it's personal, I'll find a common experience and say, hey, I've been to that place too, or I've had that experience too. So I find that the most confidence-inducing characteristic, and probably the most important thing I've learned in the last 20 years, but certainly doing this work, is just to shut up and to really attentively listen to people and take it all in and then provide some input or a statement of common ground or a question. If there doesn't seem to be any, kind of guide the conversation a little bit with a question. But people who talk the most are trusted the least in general.
Yeah. No, I believe that. It's honestly one of the main reasons why I'm doing this podcast, is to try and get better at just like overall talking. I mean, networking is great. I think I can literally talk to a brick wall sometimes, but at the same time, I want to be able to get better at like the conversational piece with people that I don't really even know in a sense, and be able to get something, not only give something, but also get something that I've never even learned before or never known, and just like open my brain in like a completely different way, and That to me is really exciting, and this journey that I'm basically trying to go on in a sense, and bring anybody else along with me who's willing to be like, hey, I want to learn something too, um so yeah, I mean, I love all of that, I really do. um this is this question I've asked everybody so far. I'm not really asking you like what religion you are in a sense, but I'm more curious if you've ever used like spirituality or like some form of God or religion to like push you forward in your successes, or if you don't use it at all. I'm curious, really. That's why I asked this question.
Well, I went to Catholic school from first grade through the end of college, so it's hard to escape a Catholic mindset,
Yeah.
frankly. And the Catholic mindset I grew up with was a liberal one. It was accepting. So that informs me every day. You know, be a decent person, do the right thing, let people be who they are. Try to be kind to people. Don't have money as the first goal of your life, but maintain your independence financially. So the religion, I think, is a cultural influence to me that's actually very important. I don't go to church much now. I wouldn't consider myself an active church member, but if you pay attention in any church, they're generally teaching you to be a good person, do the right thing, think of the other guy, try to help the other guy where you can, and that's kind of my core approach to life.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like that, and that's a great answer. Have you ever tried doing any like meditating or anything like that?
No, I have friends who are into mindfulness and meditation. I appreciate it, and I think I'm mindful in my quiet with interactions with people, but I don't have a quiet enough, a disciplined enough mind to actually sit there and go through the process.
Yeah,
So
no, I
I'm more
understand.
action. I'm more action oriented.
I understand that everybody's it's different and it's hard too, you know what I mean? Like I've definitely have tried more in the past few years to like get to that quiet place, but I also think like you kind of like you just said it again, but being able to just be in a conversation with somebody and be like more quiet and listen and open up and just kind of, not or I forget what they used to tell us when I was in sales. I mean, I remember there was don't be like the alligator salesman kind of thing, big mouth, small ears. I don't remember what the opposite was. I guess like an elephant.
I follow the Harry Chapin approach to life, which is do something.
Mm.
Harry Chapin had all sorts of talents and all sorts of ways he helped people way beyond his music. But his motto was just do something. If you're sitting around and you see something that has to change, it doesn't matter that you can't think of the overwhelmingly important thing to do. Do something. So I try to do something.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what got me to my own business. I literally, it's funny. I saw something that I guess kind of changed my life in a sense. It was on social media. It was just a post that somebody wrote, and it said, "Do something every day for 2 years, and at the end of those 2 years, look back and see what you've accomplished." But also, it said like in a little paragraph, like after those 2 years, people are gonna ask you like, how did you do this? What was your trick, whatever it was. And it's just like I worked every day for 2 years. That's the simple answer. It's nothing crazy. It's just people think that once 2 years passes, like, oh my gosh. So I legitimately did that. And it started out with just like literally like watching a YouTube video, just doing some research or sending out an email or whatever it was. It really wasn't much at first, but 2 years later I had my own LLC. And I'm such a big advocate on just like doing one thing every day towards your goal, whatever it is, to just get you started. At least, obviously, if you have like the ability to do more than one thing every day, then totally go for it. But I don't know, for me it was one of the most amazing things to kind of start on, was just like I changed my phone background to that, so every day I would see it, all right, do your
Okay.
one thing, do your one thing.
Congratulations. Smart.
Yeah, it worked. It absolutely worked. And it's crazy at first too, because I didn't even realize the like how important it was and how quickly, like a year later, my entire life was like willing to change, just from putting in just a little amount of effort. And I say this to anybody that I know that ever says like, oh, I have, I want to do this. And it's like, all right, just
Right.
start with one thing, one thing. Yeah, so it's nice. It really is. And as far as the spirituality thing goes for me, I mean, it's more of I was raised very similar to you. I didn't go to Catholic school, but my parents probably wanted me to, and my grandparents definitely wanted me to. But religion, church on Sundays, the whole bit. And I think it's nice to have that. I was actually saying that in the last podcast, that it's nice to have like that background of having religion in your life and just being raised on it. The cultural values of just knowing to be nice to people and so on, and like what good and bad is in a sense. So I'll never take that away. I just found as I've gotten older and as I do a lot of research, a lot of the people that I have followed and so on, not necessarily are they like, praising God and Jesus in a sense, but they do find themselves in a more like spiritual, quiet place. And so that's why I asked, because I am curious in that sense, but not everybody is like that too, So that's why this is I think I even said this to you on our original phone call, but my real reason for this podcast and doing all this is I really am curious as to like what the correlations are to people's ideas and definition of success. And, is there an actual equation in a sense? I really do believe that there is somewhat of an underlying equation to finding a level of success in your life and happiness. But I am, I'm really curious to try and pull all these answers together and see what that is. So I am excited about that for sure. All right, so the next thing I have for you, I only have a couple more questions. It's nothing crazy. The next one I do have though is, what does fear mean to you, and how do you use it, or do you fight it?
Fear. Well, I'm not being chased by tigers, so I fear, uncertainty, doubt, lack of confidence. Those are all the things, probably more realistic representations of the same sort of anxiety. Uh, Fear is probably best defined as immediate anxiety, right? I'm anxious because this tiger is following me. I'm anxious because I can't pay my bills. I'm anxious because my best customer has changed their opinion of me. So I'm concerned. I'm anxious about all those things, and I guess the best way I fight that is to try to create predictability in my life. So, I don't drive drunk, so I'm not as afraid of having a crash. Um, I I don't I take good care of my customers. I do the right thing for my customers. So I may lose one, but I don't have extraordinary anxiety about it because I'm doing all that I can, and I'm trying to avoid putting all my eggs in one basket. That's that sort of thing. So I try to limit the situations where life can throw me a, a curveball, and you can't. I mean, sometimes you're driving sober, the other guy's driving drunk, and you can't control for that. You can drive defensively and try to keep the distance between you and the other car, but sometimes stuff just happens. But I don't fear those things because I'm doing everything I can to control my environment. And if something like that happens to me, like this small stroke that I had, I wasn't afraid of it because I didn't know what was coming. I had no idea it was coming. And now I did the required rehab, and I'm kind of moving on with my life and trying to adjust some small things. So fear is not something that's present for me every day. I am anxious about being successful. We defined success earlier, and I'm doing all I can on those two fronts we talked about, offering real value and keeping enough money in the books that I don't have to worry about money. So I'm not fearful about those two things because I work at them every day.
Cool. So that's nice. Honestly, it's one of the things that I mean, you kind of said it before. It's like keep moving, right? And it's funny. I always say that there's this fortune cookie that I always come across. I don't know why I saved the thing, but some reason I did, and it says chance favors those in motion. but yeah, I mean, absolutely. As far as fear goes, I think it's just a matter of like pushing yourself, like to keep on moving forward in a sense and not looking back on it. Um, and I like everything that you said, even as far as like, keeping your clients happy and so on and so forth like that, because for me, I think that's sometimes one of my biggest fears is like, is my client like, do they still look at me the same way? Am I doing this all right? I didn't get any answers on this last, video I sent them or this design or whatever it was. And sometimes that's like a little bit of like a fear. But I do find to get over that is I can like look back on what I do and I'm like, well, I am going above and beyond right now. I'm trying my best. I can't say that I'm lackadaisy or cutting corners and things like that. So I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, everybody should be fine. And I've built a relationship with these people to a point where they would be honest with me if there's, something wrong or whatever.
I think you're pushing it the right way. You've got to be self-actualized as a small business person. You've got to believe that you are delivering a good service, a valuable service. And it's okay too to check in with people and say, look, you're one of my most important customers. How am I doing? Mayor Koch said that. How am I doing? How am I doing? And he actually wanted, earlier in his life anyway, he wanted people to say, well, you're doing okay, but this thing or that thing could be modified. So it's okay you've got to be self-actualized. You can't be a person who's constantly looking over your shoulder, wondering what the other guy thinks of you. But it's okay in a mature sort of professional way to say, hey, here's my survey. How did I do last time? Or can I buy you a cup of coffee and just talk about our last job? I think it went well, but I'd like any small feedback from you if you have it for me. So it's okay to check in too.
Yeah, no. And then I also find too, even in that same like vein, is that if I do find that like struggle where I'm like, oh, I don't know, or I'm not feeling good, or whatever, I find that just like lead generating and like trying to go out and find new clients and so on is a great way for me to like take those fears and just be like, no, it's okay. Like I have a business and we're moving along and we're doing what we have to do. I found that is very, very, very helpful on those days where you're just like, I don't know. Cool. Is there anything that you're working on right now, like as far as the business goes? Are you trying to like push for something new or?
So the innovation I've come up with is taking people, seniors, trying to really understand their medical condition, their underlying medical condition, predict the needs they'll have in 2 years for levels of personal care, place on that basis, and then work back to a place that's also acceptable for today. Most of my competition is saying, well, tell me about the needs the senior has, and we'll find them a place that works for today. And honestly, people can do that on their own. They can, make a few phone calls. The salespeople will say, they'll generally say yes, again, this works. But I'm concerned, especially with people who have some sort of dementia, trying to understand not exactly where the disease will be in 2 years, but what care needs they might have, how the disease might progress. So a person with Alzheimer's who's 6 years into the disease, by year 8, is probably going to have problems walking, swallowing, speaking. So I want to make sure that the placement is for that period, 2 years from now. And then we find a place that's also okay for today. And that's an innovation that nobody's doing. Everybody's placing for today. And as I mentioned earlier, I've been thinking about how to create new types of value, create a different level of value for folks who approach me for help. And that's core to what I'm doing now. I'm placing for what we expect to be 24 months out. And it's been very well received.
Wow.
I don't have the data I've been doing for 24 months, so I can't really correlate it with people who have been stable in a facility, haven't had to move. But intuitively, people are saying, thank goodness we're in this place because mom's condition got worse and we're able to stay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess you really wouldn't want to hear the reverse end anyway, because that would mean that you're, if you got a phone call like, hey, we need to move because this isn't in a good spot. But I like your business model because it's perfect for people who really have no idea what's going on in this industry, because there's so much. And now that like I'm, not even like a little bit involved in this industry, I'm learning and I'm like, oh my gosh, there is so much going on here. And on top of it, I did I like began a documentary on the elder care abuse in New York and Long Island and so on. And it was very interesting what I learned. And one of the things I learned is that some of these facilities are just, they neglect people horribly. Um, Not really in a way that they're intentionally doing it, but sometimes they're just understaffed, whatever that may be. And to have somebody like you who can be like, hey, listen, your disease might get you to this point in, X amount of years or something like that. Just to be completely honest with you, we should put you in this place, not this place. It makes a lot of sense. And that's what, like 90% of of people in this world who have either it's themselves or their parents or whoever that they're trying to help put into these facilities, they have no idea what they're talking about. So I love that. And that's a really cool business model that you have that, because it's helping people put them in a place where it's going to avoid something that like these horrible stories that you hear, in a sense, of these people going into places and like what you just said, if you get to a point where in like 3, 4, whatever, however many years you can't walk and you're in a place where, they might be a little bit understaffed or something like that. Like, what do you do when you have to
Quite
go to the
true.
bathroom, or when you
Yeah.
have to get some food or like whatever? That's not okay. So, and that to me breaks my heart. Nobody wants to be like that when they're old.
Well, I had a 25-year career in the rental business, renting various kinds of technology, and we were always thinking about how do we separate ourselves from the other guy, the other rental service. And so I had that experience as an executive saying, we are differentiated, we're not differentiated, we are providing a higher level of value, we're not providing a higher level of value. So I had the experience of being the head of companies for many years and evaluating candidly ourselves versus the competition, saying, hey, we're head and shoulders above the competition or we're not. So when I got into this business, I did the work for a couple of years and tried to learn what I was doing, learn about families and the dynamics. And then I started to think, okay, so there are plenty of competition, as you mentioned, in this business. How can I do it better? How can I offer a little more value? How can I separate myself from the various kinds of competitors? And this is what I came up with, and it's I've been getting great response for it.
Yeah. I mean, I totally see why you are getting a good response for it, because it makes perfect sense, and I've never heard of anything like this really, other than people just going out and doing their own research. I mean, my grandfather, when I was younger, was in a an elder facility, but I don't remember ever recalling, there being somebody else other than my mom doing like everything,
Mm. Yeah.
um, and that's stressful. That's extremely stressful, especially like someone like my mom, when she had at the time 3 young kids in school, you have a full-time job, and now all of a sudden you have to like figure out all these things for your parent or your loved one. It's stressful, and scary.
The whole
So
idea of assisted living is to let adult children go back to being adult children and interact about their children, interact about whatever the common topics have been between parent and child their whole lives, and let somebody else do the care. Let somebody else take care of the person's body and perhaps their finances, their meals, and then they can kind of get back to what made them a family. It wasn't the work. It wasn't the activities of daily living. It was the love they had and the activities they shared, and they can get back to that.
yeah, yeah. I agree. And like I said before, just putting somebody in that age in the right space is one of the most important things, just because as we get old, it's like the brain needs to be like constantly like it's a machine, you turn it off, it's not good, you got to keep any machine just running as long as it possibly can and keep the oil clean, kind of thing.
Quite true.
Awesome. So the last thing well, yeah, I guess like 2 things really. The only really last thing is do you have any goals for yourself or for your business going forward?
I wanted to be a little bit larger, so I'd like to have an employee or two, so I can uh, go to town for a weekend.
Yeah.
So I need some help, and I'll probably have that towards the end of 2023. I want to continually offer better value than my competitors, offer a good service, a service that generally helps families. I guess those would be the 2 intermediate goals.
Yeah. All right. Those are great goals. I mean, I hope to be right there with you and expand the business, right? That's
Excellent.
that's the name of the game. And then where can people that watch this find you if they have any questions, or if they, if they want to go to your website or whatever?
My website is assistedlivinglocators.longisland.com. Long, easy to remember, but long. And my phone is 516-254-9481. And either the website, you can contact me through the website, or just call me.
Cool. Awesome. Well, that makes it super easy. Yeah, I mean, overall, this was like a super great conversation, learning about your business and everything overall as far as following the winners. I think you've kind of answered a lot of my questions perfectly and have given me just a nice perspective, because every day I listen to different motivational speakers and so on, and you're like on point, I feel like, with a lot of them in the way that you think and the way that you speak. And it's nice to meet that every so often when I'm doing this kinds of things, and just like meet people who understand, like, I don't know, life clearly, it feels like. So I really appreciate you having the time to sit down and talk with me today and answer my list of questions for you.
A
But
useful project, Tom. I'm glad you're doing it.
yeah, I think it's cool, and it's like a fun way to do networking, in a sense, to kind of go in and learn, and as well as share back and forth on a cool level where I can now share this with people who could probably grab something from it, in a sense. Because I mean, like in that video that I sent you, following the winners has been something that's like important to me, and I think everybody kind of needs to open their eyes a little bit and see like the people in their life who are doing well. And it doesn't have to be necessarily financially, but just something that causes them to like want to wake up in the morning and be like, yes, I want to take on today, and not curl into a ball and hide kind of thing. So
I've had a business career it's been over 40 years now, and it's nice to be able to, if not be the grand old man, provide some insights to folks. So I haven't lost the desire to be influential and to be helpful, and this is a good forum for us. So thank you.
yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because I forget who I met recently, but they said that there's two types of successful people. And I was like, oh yeah, what's that? And they said there's the type of successful people who gain success and they hide it all and they don't want to share it with anybody. And then there's the type of successful people who get to a level and then they want to turn around and go, hey, how can I help this person? How can I share this with somebody? So I think you just answered that question for me. But thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it. So we'll go ahead and we'll end this for today here.